Assembly of First Nations chiefs voted unanimously Tuesday to demand the federal and Alberta governments withdraw their new pipeline agreement, while voicing full support for First Nations on British Columbia's coast who strongly oppose the project.
Whether you support the pipeline or not, we can all agree that any government must seek our free and prior and informed consent before any proposed projects take place on our land and waters. This MOU provides no such assurances. The MOU enables the government to do business as usual, despite legal requirements to uphold the UN Declaration. This MOU sets us back decades, not just the recklessness language that undermines all First Nations rights, but we have all been down this road before. I take us back to former Enbridge pipeline, which sought to ram through our territories without our consent. Make no mistake, First Nations in BC stood in unity then, and we stand together now.
Hundreds of First Nations leaders are meeting in Ottawa this week for the AFN's annual December gathering, where the recently announced federal-provincial memorandum of understanding for a pipeline to Asian markets quickly rose to the top of the agenda. In response, AFN delegates passed an emergency resolution, reaffirming their support for the existing tanker moratorium and rejecting any move to weaken it.
On the weekend, we saw a national report on the Alberta-Canada MOU state categorically that the mantra of free, prior and informed consent from Indigenous communities is gone, as if First Nations rights can be wiped away with one federal-provincial MOU. It was difficult to watch BC and many First Nations excluded from these discussions, particularly on the Pacific Coast. So we lift up all chiefs impacted for their passion and for their leadership, regardless of their position. Chiefs, of course, have different views on development, and this is to be celebrated. I told the press that this morning, not feared or used against us as a wedge to try and divide us. The truth is that Canada can create all the MOUs, project offices, advisory groups that they want, but chiefs are united. When it comes to approving large national projects on First Nations lands, there will not be getting around rights holders. That's another reason outstanding First Nations treaty rights must be reconciled before others, because Métis rights do not include rights over First Nations lands, territories, and resources. First Nations, with the exception of the Inuit, are the only true landowners of these traditional territories. We have governed these lands. We have governed these lands since time immemorial, prior to colonial borders. Our rights cannot be implemented and respected without us in substance and in process, and they cannot be respected after the fact. When Canada and the provinces tried to exclude First Nations from repatriating the Constitution in the early 1980s, we fought to ensure Section 35 was included to affirm our treaty and pre-existing inherent rights. We raise this critical history because Canada, the province, and proponents developing these major projects must take First Nations rights seriously. Everyone should know by now that there is no cutting corners when it comes to protecting human health, vital watersheds, and the constitutional rights of First Nations people.
In addressing the Assembly of First Nations, Prime Minister Mark Carney stressed principles of construction, trust, and partnership with First Nations.
Canada's new government is committed to working directly with you to build stronger nation-to-nation relationships. For it's only by working together that we can build stronger, more prosperous First Nations communities and a stronger, more resilient Canada. In a more dangerous and divided world, Canada is choosing to build, from major national projects to local infrastructure, including in housing and water. And above all, we are choosing to build brighter futures for all our people across this great land. This mission of building is a positive endeavor. The question is not what we're against, but what we're for, what we want to build together. because this approach must be informed by and can only move forward with First Nations. We build Canadian. We build sustainably. And crucially, we will build in partnership by upholding Indigenous rights and building in ways that First Nations communities have greater security and greater prosperity.